Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Beta FPV Pavo 25. This comes as a bind-to-fly. You can buy it with the Caddx HD, which kinda isn't Caddx HD anymore. You remember the Vistas? Well, I don't think it's going to be actually Vista, so it might, same system, probably comes under a different name from different vendors. Also Walk Snail, and you can get it analog. I built this one with the parts that Beta FPV sent along. I provided my own SMO4K as well as the Vista that's down there. My antenna that I on here is pretty short, so something to note if you build one. That antenna that comes stock with the Vista doesn't stick up very far, at least it didn't for me. One of the primary designs around this is being able to separate the prop guard from the frame with just 6 screws, 2 here, 2 there, and 2 up front here. And then this whole center section comes out with all your components leaving just the frame behind. And we will take a look at that a bit later. The motors are the Beta FPV 1404 4500 kV in a pusher configuration, so the prop's closest to the ground. And that prop is the Gemfan D63 tri-bladed props, coming in gray here. Flight controller, which you can kind of see down there, is the F405 all-in-one 20 amp toothpick V4, which has the BMI 270 gyro on it. Down in this section is the Caddx Vista and the Nebula Nano Pro camera. I did not connect a receiver, I just used my DJI remote and the Vista to control it. The kit does come with an LED that is right behind this printed piece, as well as this little antenna holder, which you can also put a T-style antenna in, say for crossfire or something like that. In my typical fashion, I not only flew it slow, but I flew it faster, and you can see I got a little problem right there. We'll get into that. It weighs over 192 grams. In the slow flight, I used this RDQ Series 850 milliamp 4S battery, and with that battery, including the SMO4K, it weighs 291 grams. In the faster flight, I flew it on this 650 milliamp 4S G&B battery, which it's still above 250, but if we take out the SMO4K, it's 230 grams. By the way, the mount that comes with the Pavo 25 is very specific to the Beta FPV SMO4K camera, as you might expect. Looks like the carbon fiber is 2.5 millimeters thick, and motor post to motor post, I'm getting about 107.5 millimeters. Battery needs to fit between these two 3D printed pieces, and that is 30 millimeters wide. Note, as we're sitting here on the table, all that wind, you can see the potted plant down in the lower right moving around, and all those trees kind of top center, as well as the 2 scratches, or maybe even more scratches I have on my SMO4K. What we're listening to here is the audio from the SMO4K, but don't worry, when we get to the faster flight, I'll have my typical flight audio camera out. The SMO4K does a little bit of gyro stabilization. You can also process it through the Insta360 Studio app to get some additional processing out of it. Overall, it's pretty smooth, and in this particular case, because it is so windy, I was surprised that it flew as well as it did, because, you know, whenever you have these sort of prop protection that have a solid face to them, let's say, the wind is going to have some impact. It's going to push it around in some way, unless it's really big and really heavy. Of course, if you've got gaps in the prop protection like the Synlogs do, it has a slightly less impact, but it still has an impact. So I wanted to show you this because I don't know if you call it fortunate or unfortunate, but I have wind a lot. This particular wind is 12 to 15 miles an hour with gusts up to 20 miles an hour. But of course, we're in town, so we have houses, fences, trees, all that sort of stuff that can potentially knock down the wind from actually hitting all of that wind hitting the quad. So we disclose that. Of course, it's been serious hot, as it has been for quite some time. Temperature in the upper 90s. I didn't actually write it down, but the only days we've seen temperatures not in the upper 90s, it's rained. So I kind of know it's not one of those days. Of course, if you wanted to get under 250 grams and fly a larger battery, probably looking at building your own with analog potentially. If being under 250 grams is important to you, that's probably the best option for the longest flight time. Of course, your HD camera could vary. You don't have to use the SMO4K, even though this mount's made for it. You can print your own and use any mount you want. The mount does come with the frame kit, which this was kind of sent to me as a kit minus the Vista and the camera, so I kind of assembled it in the recommended manner. And you see our little ceiling fan over the grill area that's blowing. This flight is actually probably close to 10 days ago, so it was a while back. The SOD is still setting up. This flight is on the 850 milliamp 4S battery, as I showed in the quick specs with that all-up weight, and the flight time is right around 5 minutes. You know, it's going to vary a touch. In some ways, I'm having to fight the wind when it's blowing on the quad, so that creates a variable, of course, if you're flying in a completely still environment. Lucky you, but yeah, I don't have that very, very often. I don't think we need to stick through the entire flight. Let's get to the faster flight, and then we can look at some crash footage as well. So we're sitting on the table, and you can tell my camera angle has changed pretty dramatically. You can also tell there's a little bit of wind if you happen to see those trees before takeoff. The wind isn't nearly as strong, though. My records indicate that the wind was 7 to 10 miles an hour on this particular day. I did not know the gusting. So smaller battery, GNB 650 milliamp 4S battery, camera angle way up, no SMO 4K in this flight. These hard turns that I do between these two longer stretches of trees are a method of testing prop wash handling, how well this thing is tuned. I didn't tune this. I got a CLI dump from Beta FPV, and I think they hired one or more people. I'm hesitant to say it for certain, but I think Mark Spatz, UAV Tech, may have done it for free, or Gal Kramer, one or both of those. Yeah, so unfortunately it does wash out. That quick maneuver that we saw there, that was uncontrolled. That's kind of what we see in this form factor of quads when you fly them aggressively, specifically with dives. There's something about the airflow. Sometimes you can get away with it because you've modified the dive in a particular way. Maybe it has to do with the quad's power to weight ratio. Power to weight ratio always helps, but that ducting creates kind of airflow difficulties, which can oftentimes result in that sort of what we call yaw washout. But when you do shorter dives, it seems to work out just fine. But otherwise, I'd say the tune is very good, and I can't necessarily blame the tune for the washout, you know, because that's something that we've seen, as I said, on a lot of this form factor of whoops. Of course, this flight, the faster flight, is not necessarily what these are designed for, or you might say not at all what they're designed for, but there's something that I like to do in case someone happens to be pursuing one and wants to know. You know, how do you know if no one tests it? And I don't know that anyone else is. I would be hopeful that some of the others out there that are doing quad reviews or have these quads and making videos, that they are flying them more aggressively as well. That way people are just more well informed about their purchases, because, you know, money ain't free, right? It always costs us money. Money always costs us money. Jeez Louise. Don't do what I'm doing in this flight. I'm going to pretty much just fly it till the battery makes me fall out of the air. Yeah, I kind of noted that was a little bit wonky. I'm not sure what that was about. Never saw it on any of the other flights and didn't see it after this flight, even after the frame was broken. It seemed to be one of those weird, odd quirks that maybe it was me on the sticks and I just didn't identify it. But yeah, I'm going to fly this battery until it just can't fly no more, down to 3 volts. And don't do that. So your flight time with the GNB 650 milliamp 4S battery should be about 2.5 minutes flying like this without the SMO 4K.
Oh, geez, the battery went totally flat again. Holy catfish.
This is my most dramatic crash, and this is where I broke the frame, even though I flew it, looks like 5 times after this. I broke the frame, that little piece you saw when we were going through the quick specs. I am going to dot this tree just hard, and battery ejection, and it's gone. Let's go back and look at that one more time. That's fun, right? Go down this straight path here and then race towards it, and from... So the tree did hit on this side. If you line that up, you know, as you're flying forward, just like we were in that FPV view, the tree hit on this side, and the battery ejected. Oddly enough, you know, it got through this mount. The battery had to have come forward, right? So it must have slipped by this HD camera mount, which I did have on there at the time, and then went flying off. Actually, I found the quad further away than the battery. The battery fell relatively shortly after the tree. It does come with this battery lead, which is an XT30, and it does have a capacitor underneath there. That's pretty much standard with Beta FPV all-in-one boards, that they come like that. I'm not crazy about this mounting, and this mounting for the battery, that is, was something that gave me pause, because I thought, should I even be bothering to fly this more aggressively? Because, you know, this, my initial thoughts was, this is 3D printed and this is going to tear off. But I had a battery ejection and it didn't tear off. This is the Beta FPV strap that comes with it. Sorry, I bumped the camera. It doesn't have any silicone in here, so that's probably the main reason why the battery went flying and we didn't see any pressure on this. I did have a number of other crashes. I didn't have a crash that involved this getting torn. This actually was when I was flying a 650 and the battery strap was long enough that once I had it over here, the battery strap got down into the prop. And the prop just chewed that dude all up. But I left it there. I thought it gave it some character, much like if a pet chews something up. But we can see the foam guard. While it's damaged, it's still intact. It's still on here. It's not really, falling off or anything like that. And that's just got a single strip of that double-sided tape behind there, which you do have to apply yourself. As far as the frame, the rest of it goes, it seems to be pretty hardy. That was a pretty substantial crash that it had to make that breakage. Of course, we've seen other frames that are indestructible, but I think this one got a pretty good test that, there's no marketing or anything on this being indestructible. So if you're looking to build a Cinewhoop for those slow, thematic sort of flying, this might be an option to have something that's going to be relatively durable. Or if you're struggling with the durability of, say, a Cinlog 25, that's the one I hear a lot about. People ask about replacement prop guards that are more robust. Something else that I think we have to look at here is this could have been decreased in weight just by this housing structure and the size of the screw and the nut that they used here. I bet you we could drop a gram or two with having this structure changed to where we'd use a smaller like M2 screw. And so that decreases the amount overall necessary of the material around here. That's me hypothesizing. I was a little bit surprised that we didn't have some vibrations in the camera because it's not really firmly mounted up here and this print doesn't sit up against the carbon. But due to the components not having excessive vibration and the tune doing a very good job, in my view, the footage that we saw from not only the SMO 4K, but the Nebula Pro Nano was pretty stable, pretty solid, what you would expect. Obviously, my props have some grass stains on them, and I've got some grass around here because, I like to give these things a test, and so far I'm getting a lot of approval from others. Initially, when I looked at this battery mat, I was like, that's cute. Why did they just have this one little section way back here? Why don't we have another one up here? And yeah, looking at it now, I understand why they don't have anything under here because you're using the tension from the battery strap to hold it in the middle, and it actually kind of holds it up. If you can, kind of see that because the battery strap holder isn't down low on the carbon, so your battery is actually kind of suspended, so you definitely want that mat. And it is, relatively thick, rubbery, and it is texturized, but I think we need another piece right up here in order to give our battery a little bit more of a fighting chance. We may even want that to be thicker. So if you have your own that you're building, maybe you want to double this up by putting something underneath this to bring it up a touch more. Maybe not, but yeah, that is a consideration that you can possibly make. I noted it earlier, but this is my stock Vista that I stuck in here, and can we see? Yeah, you can see the antenna tube right here. So, that it's probably came off another quad, or I had just bought one, so I think this is pretty stock. The lead length needs to be a bit bigger in order to get this antenna up a little bit higher. So if you wanted better video penetration and range, higher antenna is going to be better because obviously with it so low, there's going to be so many angles that something is going to get between the antenna and where it would need to be receiving and transmitting from. So yeah, up higher would be better. Let's take those 6 screws out, and I'll show you kind of what it looks like without the housing or the ducts on here. Okay, so I've taken the screws apart, and we'll separate these 2 pieces, just kind of proof of concept. I know many others have had videos on this. I've seen the thumbnails. I'm not oblivious. How come it's not coming out? There we go. So obviously we have some bits that kind of have to be seated down in here, and that does get a little bit fussy to kind of get everything lined up and seated down there so you can get the carbon right down on top. But it is something worth noting with this that they do have these brass fittings kind of pressure fitted in order to make the ducting stick to the carbon fiber. So this is basically what you got, I guess. Somebody's going to ask, well, can I just fly it like that? Sure, knock yourself out. I wouldn't do it. Don't recommend it. And I would tell you no, but you can do it. I mean, everything that you need to fly is right here. Of course, you got a dangly antenna. You probably want to do away with the LED. Yeah, but yeah, you could... it still has prop clearance. Maybe you just take the antenna out of the holder and you pop it up through here or through this little slot right here. And you just don't have the LED. Fly this thing around like that. Wouldn't that be an ugly bird? But anyway, so something else that I did was I did my handy dandy Emax tape job right here on my cable to make sure that didn't get sideways. Although it does have slotting. The cable for the camera would be up here. It does have that slotting that it could lay in. As part of just my building process, I went ahead and made sure that that cable was, secured and shortened so it wouldn't be flopping around, creating vibration or potentially slipping through this little gap and getting into a prop, because that would create sadness. And this, I think, is for our antenna, for our Vista here. A little bit of grass on there. I did put a capacitor on mine. Let's see, it's a 25 volt, 330 microfarad capacitor. Something that I noticed when you put this stuff together, that it kind of goes in and then you have to twist it a bit. I'm hopeful that I can kind of show that without getting myself into a bind. Is this the right way? Yeah, this is the right way. I kind of have to, there we go. See, I don't know if you could see it. See how it's kind of cockeyed? And then you straighten it out. But it does. Well, now I got my LED on top. Maybe I could just fish that through on the side where I don't have to worry about that one so much. When we slide it on down, you want to make sure your capacitor goes down in that little gap. You can see my capacitor. See it moving as I press this down. Oh, I got a prop in the way. I got to twist it more. There we go. See how it kind of popped down there. And then I got to get this down in there. See, it's fussy. Yeah, that's the basic premise. You fuss around with it, you get it all back down in there a little bit. It's just, maybe it's the way I have it built that it's not exceptionally clean. Did I just break something? I think I saw the antenna. Yep, I pulled the antenna right loose. Jeez Louise. Okay, so I guess I'll be replacing that. Real world. Excellent. So, I wanted to show you that, and now I have, and I've created myself some more work. Oh, and now I've got it backwards. That's why it didn't go together right. Jeez Louise. So here we go. Let's try that all again. I wouldn't have broken my antenna if I'd done it right the first time, right? It's always so hard when you have to do these things on camera. Okay, so now it's seated, and it's slightly twisted, and you just kind of get it back into the angle that you need. It does have this USB port on top. They've also got a cutout for the USB port. Maybe you can see it right down through there. Let's see where the yellow wire is. If you can't see clearly in the video, that's where the USB port is. Not really accessible, but with a right angle adapter, I was able to get that in there because this particular board has the horizontally mounted USB port rather than a vertically, so you don't have it directly accessible through here. So that is the Pavo 25 from Beta FPV. Let me open up this tab on the price to see if we can take a look at the pricing real quick, because we oftentimes want to know that, and sometimes I remember to even cover that. It looks like the Caddx version with no receiver. It comes in at $349. The Walksnail version with no receiver comes in at $349. And what's the analog? Analog comes in at $224. That's the bind and fly, so they would build it for you. There's also a kit, which is much less expensive. I currently don't have that on the screen for me to look at, but if you do want to take a look, I'll have links down in the video description to both the bind and fly as well as the frame kit. You can of course source other parts. Maybe you have different all-in-one you want to use, or different motors, what have you, and knock yourself out and have some fun, whether it be with this quad or something else. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. Yeah, I got an antenna repair now. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.